Hello, this is Zamanzadeh from ZZNetworking.com. In order to see better, press this icon to view full screen. We're going to continue where we left off in our last tutorial. Now, when we select all the information from the user constraints, remember in the last tutorial we dropped the primary key for con1 and cascaded the effect. Now, by doing so, we notice that con1 does not have we have two C's, not null and a check constraint, but no P, no primary key constraint for con1. And in addition, con2's foreign key constraint was deleted because that was preventing us from dropping the primary key constraint on con1. That's what it means to cascade the effects. So effectively, we got rid of the primary key constraint on con1 and a foreign key constraint on con2 that referenced con1. So let's go ahead and take a look at our tables now. We'll select everything from con1, and we should have two rows, which we see we have. We select everything from con2. We should also have two rows there, which we do. Constraints don't affect data that's already in your table. It only affects what data you can add to your table. So I just wanted to show you that. Let's go ahead and drop these tables now. Drop con1 and drop con2. Now, before we go any further, I'd like you to go ahead and recreate con2 and then con1 as we did in the very beginning, because I need to show you something about dropping tables when you have constraints. Now, we're going to go ahead, and you may want to pause this video. First, create con2, code the following, which I'm selecting and executing, and then go ahead and code con1 and execute that as well. So now that we have these two tables created, let's try and drop them again with the constraints that we have. We'll start off by saying drop con2. When we execute this, you notice that we have a unique primary key and table referenced by foreign key error. That sometimes is a problem, so what do? Because these constraints are stopping us from dropping this table, we have to say drop table con2 cascade constraints. This will get rid of the problem with the foreign key reference from con1 to con2. Table is dropped. Then, since con1 is by itself, we don't have to say cascade constraints. We can simply drop it. I just want to show you, if you ever want to drop a table that has constraints attached to another table, you have to use the reserved word cascade constraints to drop the table. Now, let's go ahead and describe con3. Now, con3 is a standalone table. We have the ID column, the region column, and the name column. Let's try and do a few inserts into con3 and see how constraints affect the inserts we will be doing. Well, the first insert we're going to say insert into con3 values 100 AZ Thomas. We go ahead and execute this, and it says check constraint violated. Well, let's go ahead and view our user constraints table, see what's going on. Well, we can see that here in con3, sure enough, on the first row, we have a check constraint that says region in north, northwest, northeast, east, west, south, southwest, and southeast. Our region says AZ, Arizona, so we cannot enter that in. It has to be in one of these things that we specified here in our check constraint. It can't be anything else but that. So let's go ahead and get rid of this and code the following. Same code, only this time, instead of AZ, we put down SW, Southwest. We go ahead, and one row is inserted. Now, you notice down here is the same exact code, only we switch back to that AZ problem. Let's go ahead and try and execute this. Naturally, we're going to get that same check constraint violation. So suppose we go ahead and say, okay, let's go ahead and change that AZ to Southwest as we did right up here. Let's try and enter this into the table. Well, the next violation we're going to get is called a unique constraint violation. Why? Because remember, we have the name Thomas inserted into our database, and we put a unique constraint violation, meaning you cannot have the same name. It has to be a unique value or a null value. So that's why this code here violates the unique constraint. Well, what else do we have that's a problem? We'll go ahead and execute this code, and we get the following error. It says PK, primary key, because even though now the name is Bob, it's unique, even though the region is now Southwest, which is acceptable, the 100 already exists in our table, so it violated our primary key constraint. So what do we have to do? We have to insert the following row: 200 Southwest Bob into con3. We execute this, and now we have another row inserted into our database. Now, let's try the next code. We say insert into con3 values 300N and null for the name. Sure enough, it's inserted. Why? Because you could put a null value into a column designated with a unique constraint. Let's go ahead and try and insert the next row. Sure enough, that row is also accepted with another null value. So now let's go ahead and look at all the columns from our table con3. So we'll have 4 columns. We'll have an ID of 100, 200, 300, 400, and null values for the name, even though it has a unique constraint. We could have Bob, we could have Thomas, but we cannot have another Bob or another Thomas. We can either have a null value or some other name. Well, I hope this lesson has been helpful for you. We no longer need the table con3, so go ahead and drop that. Table is dropped. Thank you for your time, and may God bless you.